The air at Camp Willowmore had a suffocating stillness as the sun set, casting long shadows across the deserted grounds. It was the last week of summer, and the remaining campers, those chosen to stay behind and help close down the camp, felt it too. A strange tension hung in the air, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. Among the group was Jordan, a quiet 16-year-old who loved the camp more than anything. With her curly brown hair tied up under her camp hat, she always felt at peace in the woods, far from the suffocating chaos of home. But something about this summer was different. The trees whispered secrets, and the lake, once peaceful, shimmered under the moonlight with a strange, foreboding stillness. Even her friends, Emily, Noah, and Jason, seemed on edge. Laughter was rare now, replaced by hushed conversations and nervous glances at the woods. And every night, Jordan heard it. A faint whisper, so soft it was easy to dismiss. But each night, it grew louder, calling her name. She didn't tell the others at first, not wanting to seem paranoid. But as the week wore on, strange things started happening. Objects moved when no one was looking. Cabin doors creaked open in the dead of night, and shadows seemed to flicker at the edge of her vision, only to vanish when she turned to look. It all came to a head one night when they gathered around the campfire. Emily, pale and trembling, broke the silence with a story none of them had heard before. "They say a camper disappeared here last summer," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackling flames. Her hands trembled as she pulled her knees to her chest. He vanished from his tent. No one ever found him. Jason, always the skeptic, snorted. "Come on, that's just campfire bull." "I saw something," Emily interrupted, her voice shaking. "Last night, by the lake." Noah leaned in, his face serious. "What did you see?" Emily's eyes darted to Jordan, then back to the fire. A face. In the water. It was watching me. The group fell silent, the weight of her words settling like a stone in their chests. Jordan's heart raced. She hadn't seen a face, but she'd heard the whispers. She wasn't alone in feeling it. That night, Jordan lay awake, her mind racing. The whispering had started again, soft at first, barely noticeable. But this time, it didn't stop. "Jordan." The voice was closer now, more insistent. Suddenly, a cold draft swept through the cabin, and the temperature dropped sharply. Jordan's breath caught in her throat as she saw something. A shadow, tall and indistinct, standing just beyond the window. Her heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the whispers, but her body refused to move. She was frozen, gripped by a terror so primal, she felt like prey. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of fingers brushing against the window made her stomach lurch. Slowly, with trembling hands, she pulled the blanket over her head, trying to block out the sound, the fear. But the tapping grew louder, more insistent. Tap, tap, tap. It was no longer outside. It was inside. She bolted upright, her eyes scanning the room. But there was nothing, just the oppressive darkness pressing in around her. The others were fast asleep, unaware of the terror unfolding. But Jordan knew something was wrong, terribly wrong. The next day, she found Emily by the lake, staring at the water with hollow eyes. "They want something," Emily whispered, her voice distant. "They're not just watching us. They need us." Jordan's stomach twisted. "Who? What are you talking about?" "The ones who never left," Emily said, her voice breaking. "The ones the camp doesn't talk about." As night fell again, the group was assigned to clean the old boathouse by the lake. The air inside was thick and stifling, and the strange occurrences began almost immediately. Objects moved on their own. A door creaked open with no wind to push it. And then there was the voice. At first, it was a faint murmur, barely noticeable over the sound of their movements. But soon, it grew louder, more distinct. "Come closer." Jordan froze, her breath catching in her throat. She glanced at the others. Emily's face was ashen. Noah stood rigid, and even Jason had gone silent, his usual smirk replaced with unease. "What the hell is that?" Jason whispered, his voice barely audible. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the boathouse, and the old wooden beams groaned as if something heavy had moved across the floor. The group huddled together, eyes wide, hearts pounding. Jordan could feel it, the presence closing in around them. The walls seemed to shrink, and the shadows danced unnaturally in the dim light. Then, from the corner of the room came a figure. Pale and translucent, its eyes hollow, its mouth twisted into a grotesque grin. It was watching them. Emily screamed and bolted for the door, but the figure was faster. It moved like smoke, flowing across the room, and suddenly, Emily was on the ground, clutching her throat, gasping for air. The others were frozen in terror, unsure whether to run or help. "Emily!" Jordan cried, rushing to her friend's side, but something held her back. The air around Emily seemed to ripple, distorting as if the very space around her was bending. And then, Emily stopped moving. That night, the camp's eerie silence was deafening. Jordan couldn't sleep. She couldn't breathe. Emily was gone, and no one knew what had happened to her. The counselors dismissed it, claiming she'd gone home. But Jordan knew the truth. She had seen the fear in Emily's eyes as she disappeared into the night. She had heard the whispers. And now, the whispers were louder than ever. "You're next, Jordan." The voice was no longer just in her head. It filled the cabin, echoing off the walls, pressing in on her from all sides. Her vision blurred as the cabin seemed to warp around her, the walls twisting and stretching. Shadows danced, growing darker and more tangible. Faces emerged from the darkness. Twisted, tormented figures, their mouths open in silent screams. Jordan tried to run, but her legs wouldn't move. She felt paralyzed, trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake from. The figures closed in, their hollow eyes locking onto hers. Then, just as they reached her, everything went black. When Jordan awoke, she was alone. The camp was silent, the morning sun casting an eerie glow over the empty cabins. Emily, Noah, Jason, they were all gone. The camp counselors claimed they had all gone home, but Jordan knew better. She could still hear the whispers, still feel the presence lurking in the shadows. As she left Camp Willowmore for the last time, Jordan glanced back one final time, her heart heavy with dread. In the distance, just beyond the trees, she saw them, Emily, Noah, and Jason standing at the edge of the woods, watching her with hollow, empty eyes.